All right, welcome everybody. I think there was a very successful panel here just before with like 80 people on black politics in the age of Obama, and very lively, and they took like 10 or 20 minutes to clear out, and that's fine, because we have the break after this, right? So we can go a little bit longer. Anyway, the break is right after this, isn't it?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So we can go a little bit longer. And this is Occupy Neighborhood. My name is Nick. I'm with Occupy Astoria LIC. I had some big plan for this, but I'm afraid I've forgotten it already, and that's fine, because we're going to make it up as we go along. That's the Occupy spirit, right? I thought the first thing we could do was to ask who is in the house in terms of neighborhood assemblies, meaning we'll do personal introductions a little bit later, but right now, who is here like us, Occupy Astoria with Occupy with a neighborhood name?
Occupy Sunset Park.
Occupy Sunset Park. All right.
Actually, could I ask, when a name is called out, like Occupy Sunset Park, if everybody who's from that Occupy could put their hand up, just to get
Right.
a sense of...
Great, that was the idea. All right, so we got two people from Occupy Sunset Park. Who else have we got here? What other?
Kensington?
Kensington. I will start leading out the Occupy.
Occupy Harlem General Assembly.
Harlem GA.
Mm-hmm.
Sophia? You raised your hand.
No, it's for Occupy Kensington.
For Occupy Kensington, I see. Anyone else? All right, I know there are going to be a lot of Occupy Astoria people here, but I guess they're all sleeping off in Astoria. What other groups have we heard of that we know are still active? I was wondering as well. Like what other neighborhood assemblies are there that anybody knows about that are active still in New York? Because I know there are a few. So I know, for example, Queens, which is actually Jackson Heights. Occupy Queens, Jackson Heights. Not here today, but definitely very active. They do something pretty much every week.
How about Occupy Bronx? Occupy the Bronx? Are they still active?
That's the question. I was wondering first who's active that you actually
yeah.
know
Mhm.
are active. I know there are more.
Has Occupy Red Hook disappeared?
Well, let's start writing them all down. I know Occupy Red Hook was also active.
Occupy Staten Island.
Staten Island is definitely active, especially since Sandy. They've gotten bigger.
And there was Occupy Williamsburg, which
Mhm.
I think is not active.
All right, let's put Williamsburg over here because I also think they are not active. Bushwick. Is Bushwick active? Bushwick was very active.
I don't know.
All right, so Bushwick. Can anyone else think of any
I
others?
think there was a Crown Heights.
There was a Crown Heights.
There is, and they are active.
Yeah.
There is and they're active. That's great to hear. I wish they were here.
Well, I could pretend.
And was there an Occupy East Harlem that was different than Occupy Harlem? Or did I make
I don't know about East Harlem, but there was a Washington Heights West Side group
Uh-huh.
that called themselves Occupy Harlem, Occupy West Harlem. But I don't think they're active. A couple of teachers started that.
All right, and should we add Occupy Sandy here as something that partly came out of the neighborhood assemblies? All right, I was just curious to see that. Now, I was going to suggest, if it's all right, that there are three of us who are supposed to be panelists, but that we each make short statements, and then we just start a meeting. Then we introduce everybody. Everyone can introduce yourselves and start a meeting and talk about your experiences as Occupy Neighborhood or as just Occupy, and we move on from there to see where the future of this phenomenon might be. So is everyone all right with that? Okay, great. Now at this point, there's supposed to be about 4 or 5 people from Occupy Astoria here. Should I be saying that for the video? And I bet they're going to show up within 20 minutes. But I was going to just ask, like the Occupy Astoria people, what have we all done in the last year and a half since it started just a brainstorm of the different activities we've been involved with. You know, just to see, because I couldn't even remember everything myself. But no one from Occupy Astoria other than myself is here. Well, Sophia is, sorry. Sophia is, of course, is Astoria and Kensington. So what do you remember of all the things we've done? Okay, Sophia can't talk because she's taping. Hi. All right then, so then a quick quick recap just by title. What have we done at Occupy Astoria starting in January 2012? We've marched with the St. Patrick's Day for All parade. That was really a lot of fun. With the Greek Independence Day parade, we got in basically as a protest contingent at the end of the parade, highlighting the crisis situation in Greece. A group of us created this entire package about the indefinite detention law, the NDAA, how to lobby your legislators. We met with Carolyn Maloney, who actually did vote against this provision, but was not all that helpful. But it was a very interesting meeting, just about what could be done to see that this indefinite detention actually gets repealed by Congress, which would be the most certain way to kill it. Then do you remember? We did Occupy the City.
Trade fair.
Day at Citibank.
Trade fair.
Trade fair, we were most recently, in solidarity with the trade fair workers who are being locked out from the meat department. We've done film series. We did like a series of 10 films last year, and we're in the middle of a series of 6 films this year where we show documentaries for the 99%. We've gone to every possible protest you can think of, the May Day protest, the Stop and Frisk protest especially. We've done panels about Stop and Frisk in Astoria. And I'm sure I'm leaving out many other things. It was incredibly active and intense, especially in the first 6 months. The people who make up kind of the core of Occupy Astoria started in Zuccotti Park. They didn't even know each other from Astoria. They met in Zuccotti Park and said, why don't we start an Occupy Astoria? And from the beginning, we were attracting very large General Assemblies. The General Assemblies have kind of run out of steam. We had as many as 45 people at General Assemblies, and we would talk process for an hour. Maybe this is a general Occupy problem. So it's been very intense. I'd say the total number of people have been most active. Have been like really active in organizing things cumulatively over all the different events that we've done. It's about 50 different people that have been involved. But at any one time, the core is maybe 5 to 10 people. But this keeps swapping out. People come and go, and they come back. But they haven't become strangers. I think this is important because there's a lot of goodwill among us. We take each other seriously. It's a network, a community, a culture, a set of ideas, an evolving set of practices, and it's spreading, even at times when the movement seems not to be moving. And I really think this is the most important aspect at this stage for now, because we have not turned into a giant mass movement of any kind. We're not like the one big union. We're not organizing the international workers of the world, and we're not becoming a kind of force that hundreds of people in the neighborhood become members of. In large part, we're just very well known and active and spreading the ideas and becoming larger as a network of friends. I think it's extremely important to overcome the atomization in American society. I think the thing that we really confront that's the problem is people are always thinking of themselves purely as themselves. They don't know their own neighbors, and they don't know, I dislike everything about politics and economics, but I don't know what to do about it, and what could anyone possibly do, etc. So it's important to have this community. Occupy in general is widely called dead, although it is usually credited with one big accomplishment, right? Everyone says the same thing, which is what? We changed the conversation. People are talking about economic inequality. Everyone knows now that there is a 1%, and everyone knows the slogan, we are the 99%. I'd say that the initial Occupy wave started a shift in the political culture, 2 other shifts that were important besides we are the 99%. And the number 2 would be that movements for peace, justice, economic change, ecological transformation have a heightened awareness that they are involved broadly in one struggle, or roughly a similar struggle against the same system. So the slogan there has been, all our grievances are related, and people understand a single issue can't get the job done. We need to overhaul everything, economics, politics, society. We need a revolution, whatever form it's going to take. And number 3, there's this idea that this network is growing, even when the movement doesn't seem to be moving, and which it certainly isn't compared to the autumn of 2011. But I honestly think a lot more people are involved in the community than were initially. I think you'd be able to see that if there was an ability to just gather at a place like Zuccotti Park unmolested for a few days and see how that would grow. And often it's chaotic. So we don't know what the next big thing is going to be. This is unpredictable, depends on events. Factors might suddenly converge. You couldn't have said what would have happened in Turkey 3 weeks ago. So that's when we'll see what the real size of this is as it's developed. Occupy Sandy gave us a kind of glimpse where we suddenly saw thousands of people coming out under that name. They weren't necessarily Occupy involved, but they were inspired enough to call it Occupy. So I think that's important. The next big thing may not be called Occupy, and I kind of hope it isn't. I hope it's something transformed and new. And all of this is typical of social movements. What isn't typical in Occupy is that it's still been mostly a culture, a community, or a set of practices or a set of ideas. It hasn't really become a set of organizations, and there's this big tension against organizing in any fashion. So I wouldn't call it a set of ad hoc groups that associate with all of the more organized movements in this country and have served to link those movements and kind of get everything thinking the same way. I'm not here to pretend the Occupy movement or its extension to neighborhood assemblies like the ones we have on the board now has actually changed very much about the material realities in which we live. I don't see that any of our groups have become mass movements. We should ask why, what we've done wrong, or what we could do differently. And I expect we will today, but I think we should also acknowledge everything that is not in our control. We are all volunteer groups. Everyone among us has to find their living in this system. Time and resources are always a problem. I'd just like to say we shouldn't always blame ourselves every time we fail to move someone to take up the cause or join our groups or fail to have exactly the right communicating point for every single person. That's not necessarily on us. That may be on the people who don't want to get involved. They may not be ready. A lot of people don't want to learn. This is still a conservative political culture in many ways, and most importantly, everyone's still living under the limits of capitalist everyday reality, racism, sexism, the slide into an increasingly authoritarian state.
Anything else?
Well, it's big. It's big. Occupy, has definitely addresses the biggest possible picture, and that's been the criticism that comes from the media. What is your one demand? Make one demand and make it to a particular address. Acknowledge Congress as the authority, or acknowledge some state house as the authority that you are making your one specific demand that we in the media